Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here, the mediocre astrologer. He's okay. What's up, everyone? In this video, I want to talk about, I want to go over the chart of Vivek Ramaswamy, potential, or not potential, presidential candidate, presidential potential, I guess you could say. And yeah, he's in the news, obviously, for not only his campaign, but um, Donald Trump, former president, President Trump, posted on his Truth Social about Vivek, which is fun and interesting because Donald Trump is fun. You know, he's fun. He's good for a laugh, whether you like him or not. I mean, so here I'm going to read it. Vivek started his campaign as a great supporter, the best president in generations, in quote. He's saying about what Vivek would say has said about Donald Trump, and he's a Trump supporter, Vivek, etc. Unfortunately, now all he does is disguise his support in the form of deceitful campaign tricks. Now, I don't even know what kind of tricks these are, but okay. Very sly, but a vote for Vivek is a vote for the other side. Don't get duped by this. Vote for Trump. Don't waste your vote. Vivek is not MAGA. The Biden indictments against his political opponent, meaning Trump, will never be allowed in this country. They are already beginning to fall, MAGA. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Trump is referring to. I only know my own experience looking at Vivek, listening to him. He's interesting. I'll say that. I like some of his points, but there's something I kind of get like what Trump is referring to with the sly deceit. Like he just seems a little bit slimy to me, like a little bit like I don't know if I can fully trust him. At the same time, his astrology chart kind of will clear up any obfuscation. So let's look it up. You know, we're not always sure who a person is, but if you look at their chart, then you can make a lot more sense out of the you know, what you're witnessing and what you're not. All right. So we have a Capricorn ascendant, right? So very hardworking. Um, I mean, Capricorn ascendant isn't always hardworking, but it potentially is, right? But it definitely creates a kind of hard exterior, um, you know, professional, authoritative, solid. And then Saturn is ruling Capricorn, right? And Saturn's in the 10th house, clearly. And this is a very obvious indicator of somebody who is um, a leader, a natural leader. He started a company. He became a lawyer. He's been very successful his whole life, right? And this chart kind of validates that with South Node and Saturn in the 10th house, ascendant Lord Saturn. Scorpio, very dominant, very dominating, right? Very intense. Scorpio MC, especially with Pluto here, right? So he made a lot of money. He has like he's worth 900 some million, so like lots of money. Not quite a billionaire, but he has a pharmaceutical company. He's a lawyer. He worked in finance, like so kind of, you know, all over the upper echelon of things. Um, with the Scorpio, I mean, Scorpio MC, that especially with Pluto here, um, Saturn, this is very intense, very strong leadership, but in a like a desire to control, like an intense desire to lead and control. You know, the leadership's coming more from Saturn, but the Scorpio and then the Pluto really kind of pushes it to like the nth degree. Pluto is so obsessive and extreme, right? Um, and strategic and controlling. You know, Trump is more Uranian, especially publicly, and Vivek is more Plutonian. So between the two of them, I don't know, right? Pluto is very strategic, but more hidden, and Uranus is more shocking, but brilliant at the same time, right? So Trump is more likely to, you know, say the thing. Plus, he's a Gemini, so he's going to say all sorts of crazy stuff, right? Vivek is going to plot and scheme, right? And so maybe Trump is picking up on that, like the kind of wateriness that he's feeling from the Scorpio Pluto mix. He's got his sun in Leo, so his sun is strong, and it's conjunct Mercury tightly and Mars. Mercury is retrograde, so there's a bit of belligerence there. Even though he kind of comes off like refined and polished, he's going to be pretty belligerent, and that's Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde kind of wants to disagree with everyone and everything, like all the time. Like it's almost like the default setting. It's like, because Mercury's expression, communication, the intellect, it's Mercury retrogrades can easily, I don't want to say they're always going to disagree, but it's very easy for Mercury retrograde to be like, no, that's not the way it is, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I'm like that, but there can be many ways that are people are like that, but Mercury retrograde can be quite, their first thought is not, yes, I agree with you. Although, in politics, you kind of do have to lean on that side of things, be agreeable, even in your disagreements. Sun conjunct Mars, very motivated, right? Very initiative driven, action oriented, aggressive, and it's opposite Jupiter here, right? So Sun is ruling the eighth, and it's almost in the eighth, on the eighth cusp, this triple planet conjunction. I mean, we could say seventh, but it's eighth whole sign house, and it's close to the eighth cusp, especially Mercury. And the eighth cusp, the eighth house is very powerful, also for our leadership, but in a more personal way, in a more hidden way, rather than the 10th house, which is very public, but it's still very powerful. But seventh house is good for all kinds of business dealings and relationships and public outreach in general. The sun is dignifying because of the being in Leo. It's dignifying the Mercury and the Mars. Let's see, Mercury is ruling. So they're ruling in cusp here, most of the eighth house, and fifth and sixth. So that's good. Just in general, Mars ruling the MC. Mars the MC Lord, right? So the sun is dignifying the MC and adding an element of fame and notoriety with Leo, right? Because the energy is going from here to here, right? And then Sun, it's not only Leo, it's Sun in Leo. Mars conjunct Sun in Leo, and it's a pretty good combination, I'd say. Yes, Mars gets hot, fiery, temperamental here, but the sun is exalted and Mars is a sign of Aries, so it gets a boost from that as well. So he's very there's a lot of energy, like his personality is very energetic, very go-getter, very Martian oriented, and also Jupiterian, which is interesting. He did make a lot of money. Jupiter's in the second whole sign house, still in the first house. It's in Aquarius, it's retrograde. Obviously he's an Indian immigrant. His parents moved from India. He was born in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. So he's fully American, born. But if anyone's worried about religion, no. I mean, Jupiter in Aquarius retrograde, forget it. He's probably more, technologically religious than religious, right? Jupiter in Aquarius can be quite brilliant. Definitely. You see this with very radical high-level thinkers, especially people who think about society a lot, social, philosophy. And he's not a socialist, thank God, because if he was a socialist, that would be like, yeah, he would be a real socialist if he was, but he's not. He's a capitalist. Because Aquarius can lend itself to that. Aquarius is very idealistic, ideological, heady, and it's concerned with society and politics and dystopia, utopia, kind of that polarity right here. But he's not religious, and he's probably much more technological. But Jupiter and Aquarius can be very brilliant. It's also one of the main indicators of humor, right? Jupiter and Aquarius. People with Jupiter and Aquarius if you look at the comedians, most of them, by and large, or the most common combination or aspect or position is Jupiter and Aquarius. But Aquarius in general, anyway. And his Jupiter is square the nodes, and this is a bit of a T square, or grand fixed square, sorry. With the nodes, Jupiter, Mars, and then Sun a little bit. And so that's pretty intense, right? And so that's very oppositional, especially with Mars opposite Jupiter. And this is very confrontational. And the thing about Vivek is that he probably loves getting into confrontations, right? Because it's Jupiter, it's opposite Jupiter, right? He's, his Sun and Mars are over here. And then Mars opposite Jupiter is very it enjoys physicality, it enjoys Martian aggression because the Jupiter gives it a positive note. It's not like Mars opposite Pluto or something like that, right? Or Mars opposite Saturn. It's Mars opposite Jupiter. So it's like there's something very, big and gregarious and jovial about confrontation for him. He's like, finally, I get to have a worthy opponent. Let's celebrate. Wonderful. Yes. It's like, okay, this is great fun for him, because Jupiter, it's expanding all of this oppositional confrontation, and then Mars is very physical, right? And very aggressive, right? So he loves getting into it, right? So that's one of his strengths, I think. And then the nodes, right? Mars is dignifying the south node to the square, which is interesting, and that's his public career and his success, his early success. And he's not that old yet, 1985. He's about 9 years younger than me, so 36. Yeah, roughly. So his north node is not fully activated yet. But and then so like let's look at his moon. Moon's in Gemini at 0 degrees. So dude's probably very brilliant, right? With this combination of Jupiter and Aquarius, Moon in Gemini, Chiron in Gemini probably as well. Scorpio, very deep thinking, right? But a bit, I mean, that's Moon in Gemini is not very stable. Let's put it that way, right? Very interesting, very clever, mutable, changeable, but definitely potential for it's a bit wacky. Moon in Gemini, especially at 0 degrees. It's a bit of a crazy making position. And then not only that, it's in conjunct Neptune in Capricorn. So Neptune is in Capricorn, which is stabilizing for Neptune, but it's in the 12th. And then if you look at Chiron here, Chiron's in Gemini in the 5th house, in conjunct South Node in Scorpio. And so what I'm thinking is like, 5th house is, I mean, it's lots of things, but like it's entertainment and it's the schoolyard and it's like, there, especially in Gemini, there will be an element of entertainment media related to public image that he could face a lot of scrutiny there, right? Because you have this in conjunct with South Node, almost exactly conjunct the MC in Scorpio, in conjunct Chiron in Gemini in the 5th house, right? And then Chiron's opposite Uranus as well. So this Chiron is potentially a Chiron that could produce some ill effects or damage, right? In the 5th house, it's almost like the schoolyard, you can imagine, right? So like the kids at school might bully him. And if you could make parallels to that, he's obviously not in school anymore, but there's still bullies on the schoolyard, in the world, in the schoolyard of the world. And so like if people are he might face scrutiny, he might face a lot of criticism. In fact, of course he will, he's a politician, but when he does, this could damage him, right? Because especially his intellect and his mind, because of the proximity. It's in Gemini, first of all, and then Moon's in Gemini at 0 degrees. Yes, they're 13 degrees apart, so it's not like huge, but this could mentally imbalance him if he faces a lot of harsh criticism. I'm sure he's a pretty tough guy, right? He's got the very stoic Capricorn ascendant and very confident Leo sun with Mars. And very strategic and leadership authority. So he's probably not going to show it. He's not going to show his vulnerability. But there is some mental imbalance there that potentially could be triggered by excessive criticism, excessive attacks against his character, um, things like that. Uranus opposite Chiron, South Node in conjunct Chiron, the fifth, connecting to his moon, moon in conjunct Neptune. It's a bit crazy making. So I think he's probably a very strong leader unless he faces extreme criticism or attacks where he might become mentally imbalanced, right? I mean, let's face it, Gemini is not the most stable of signs, is it? Right? Even we're talking about Gemini sun, where it's most obvious, but Gemini moon, I mean, uh, like I said, it's potential for mental imbalance, especially that this combination, Chiron in conjunct and then Moon up in conjunct Neptune, 0 degrees Gemini, which is even more intense, right? Because you're getting the unadulterated, you're getting the pure Gemini. The 0 degrees of any sign will be pure. So it's pure Gemini Moon, right? So there's that. But other than that, like if he's not facing excessive criticism and attacks and whatnot, he's probably quite brilliant. Probably a very smart man. Right. He does have his North Node in the fourth house in Taurus. And this is very earthy, right? Fourth house Taurus. And it's land and it's politics because homeland, right? So if he has his North Node in the fourth house, he's very political, right? This doesn't have to be politics. It could go many other ways, but with somebody who also has this very strong 10th house, it's going to be public and political, right? So obviously, politics is right up his alley. I mean, since he's young, he's like I said, about 36. So his first part of his life was business, start a business, make lots of money, be a lawyer, and I think he was a commercial or investment. I don't know. He financed something like that. I just briefly read his Wikipedia. But then as his North Node, as he gets older, he's definitely going to want to be more all about like let's like this is a patriot, right? Land, Earth, fourth house, right? So like politics and land ownership and taking care of his land, his country, America. Right. So he's very political. And then Jupiter Aquarius backs that up. Uranus and Sagittarius is practically a mutual reception here. Um, I say practically because Uranus is an outer planet. It doesn't rule, well, it co-rules Aquarius, but Saturn does. Anyway, this is somewhat of an energy exchange, mutual reception between Uranus and Jupiter, because Uranus in Jupiter's sign of Sag, Jupiter and Uranus's sign of Aquarius, obviously. And these are 11th house, almost second house, but money, definitely. And he's rich, right? I mean, Jupiter, in proximity to the second cusp alone, we could see that. And strong 10th house, which feeds the 11th house, Uranus in the 11th house. Uranus and Sag in the 11th house is going to be very political, right? Especially with a very strong 10th house where he can express that in the public. Because Uranus is very political. It's so big-minded. It wants to look at the whole world. And when you're looking at the whole world, you're like, countries are like, kids to, a parent, right? So you're like wanting to organize the different countries, and that's what happens when you're that big. That's what Uranus is, because it's that kind of view. It's the outer space view where you can see the whole big picture, right? So you become very political and social when you're Uranian minded. And the 11th house also has that Aquarian vibe. Sagittarius, Jupiter is just going to make it more philosophical, right? And so there's a similar vibe, Jupiter, Aquarius, Uranus, and Sag, both retrograde, right? So rebellious. So his idea of politics is going to be contrary. It's not go with the flow. It's not just, oh, let's do what everyone else is doing. He's very contrarian in his politics, right? Very idealistic, and he's not a flash in the pan. I think if anything, he's just going to, if he doesn't win this one, he's probably just going to keep running, right? Is he obsessed? Yeah. I mean, Scorpio, right? Scorpio alone, but Pluto and Scorpio, ninth house, but pretty close to the 10th. I mean, this is actually 11th whole sign, but yeah, close to the MC. So yeah, I mean, I see him as just starting out in his political career. He'll probably only grow from here. Let's see what else. We got Venus in Cancer in seventh whole sign, but sixth quadrant. And so that's very sweet and very kind and gentle and nice. And he comes off and he wants to be nice with people. And he is. I mean, generally you can see like how he treats people. I've watched him on stage and he's very diplomatic, very sweet, very kind with people. Even when you know, Trump made that tweet about him, which isn't terrible, right? But he was very gracious about it, very kind. Um, and yeah, I mean, sixth house is not so like sixth house is daily routine, hard work, health, competition, things like that. But it's so close to the descendant, and it's still a people house, so it's like, it's translating, but it's more from a service position, right? Slightly service oriented. And that's good. So this is like very subservient, even though here it's a bit more dominant, right? You can see shades. I mean, it's important to understand the gradations. We have these lines here. We think they're, completely, they are delineations, but there's also gradations, right? The closer you are to the descendant on either side, the more it's going to be about equal relationships, even if it's on the sixth house side. Closer you get to the eighth house, the more dominating it's going to be in relationships. Yeah. So, I briefly touched on everything. I mean, finance makes sense with Saturn here Saturn ruling the second in the 10th. He was in finance as well. Um, uh, Pharmaceuticals. It's interesting. Why pharmaceuticals? I mean, sixth house. I don't know. I'd have to look at that a bit more, but he did make his money with that. Anyway, let's check. Oh yeah, my Van Gogh background. Changing it up. Mercury's retro, Jupiter's retro, Uranus, Neptune's retro. So that's good. I mean, he's definitely not like a go with the flow kind of, you know, whatever the status quo is, that's what he's all about. It's pretty straightforward, everything here. Um, I like to see retrogrades because that's shows a bit of resistance, ability to stand your ground and stubbornly defy things that are wrong or, you know, not kosher. But he's very stubborn. Tons of force, tons of push. We see that in these squares. People with these squares, it's, they have to be strong because if they don't step up to the squares in their chart, it's life is just brutal. Life is brutal for people with strong squares because it's trying to instill that's the energy they're attracting because it's like the energy they need to absorb. So eventually they embody the square and just become strong and tough as can be, especially a grand fixed square, right? These people are just like full of tenacity, full of push, full of, you know, grit and stubborn will, right? Like, I mean, if anything, they need to know when to stop, when to change. And so he's got some mutables, which is good, right? Moon in Gemini, Chiron in Gemini, um, Uranus in Sag. So that's quite good. But he's very, very stubborn, and he's not one to quit. He's not one to back down. And generally looking at his chart, I kind of like him, right? There's some issues that I mean, but these are superficial. Like, I don't know. He wore his hair one day, and I was like, "That's disgusting, man. Like, why you like fix your hair? You look like the asshole." Um, you got to forgive him for for not wearing his hair properly. I don't know. He looked like he was like coming at like Justin Bieber. I was like, dude, like no, like not even like Justin Bieber when he's like, I don't know, like way back what where he like combing his, I don't know, like that horrible, 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 horrible fucking hairdo. Like nobody should ever wear that. Like the combing this like, I'm sorry, like yeah. I would just shave those kids' head, like forcefully. I would shave their heads. But anyway, um, yeah, I think he just comes off a little bit kind of funny, and I'm not sure why. I mean, it could be the series. It could be the Cancer descendant with Venus, and then the Jupiter and Aquarius. That's going to the retrograde. That's going to influence his appearance and how he shows up in the world. Aquarius is fun. Aquarius is like doesn't give a fuck. Aquarius is just like, it could be straight faces, can be, but inside they're like laughing because they know they're playing a practical joke on everyone. So I mean that could be part of it. He could just be like having fun, right? And then like the Cancer is just a little bit, I don't know. It's nice. What are you gonna do? It's Cancer. It's emotional. It's sweet. It's caring. It's sensitive. I'm not sure how Ceres and Cancer and the directly in the seventh is going to show up. Um, but I'm just leaving it there. Ceres is pretty small, but it is a dwarf planet and it's unique. It's personal. It's in the um personal. Where is it? It's like outside of Mars, in between Mars and Jupiter. Anyway, um, I think that's it. The North Node is supported by the ascendant with the trine here. And so even though it's on the fourth, it's on the IC, it's also on it's trine, so it's fifth whole sign house. So it's still bringing in some elements of entertainment, being on screen, being on stage, having a good time, fun and games, that sort of thing. So yeah, he probably is good on the stage, and so overall, I like Vivek. I think he's a pretty decent guy. Um, Not 100% like, I don't know. Like there's some like, yeah, like I said, like funniness about him, something which is just like a little bit, but that's superficial. Like I'm not really serious. It's like, yeah, I wish he presented a little bit better. Like not just like he's almost like a caricature of himself, like a caricature of um like an Indian talk show host or something like that. I don't know, like too lazy or slimy, but underneath, I think he's actually a decent. I think he's actually genuine and a good guy, and he'd probably make a really good president. Um, my only concern is this is so intense that he might just be like too severe, too strong, too hard, right? Extremely strategic, but Scorpio is just so intense. I mean, I'm like Scorpio rising, right? North Node is Scorpio, eighth house sun, but it is. I mean, Scorpio is this. I mean, if there's one sign of criminality, it's Scorpio, right? But that doesn't mean he's a criminal. That just means that's the kind of the level of intensity, and like Pluto's the great strategist, and Saturn's the great leader. So I mean, yeah, I mean he naturally wants to lead. Right? It's very easy for him. I just wonder if he's too severe. Yeah. Any case, that's my assessment of Vivek. Um, Not sure if there's anything else. I mean, this Mercury is very close to the sun, so we could talk about the combustion of Mercury. Um, and that, I don't take that too seriously. I think it's just you need some time off when your planets are combust. Yeah, my Venus combusts the sun, so it's just like I just need to cool off sometimes. I get irritated easily. I get hot-tempered, hot-blooded, and I just need to calm down. That's all it is. And then with Mercury, it's like he can't get over work because he's probably going to get that irritability with the Mercury mental, and he just needs to take a little bit of time off. Um, he's not cool-headed, right? With this combination, especially with Mars here, and Leo's very fiery. He's hot-headed, so he just needs to keep an even keel, especially with Gemini Moon. I mean, he's probably really struggling to keep everything. When he gets confronted, it's like, oh boy, he could really, if he gets pushed hard, I think you'd see him crack. Like he's been pretty good so far, but I think you'd see some cracks in his personality if he gets really hit hard with criticisms and attacks and things like that. Any case, I don't want to take too long. That's pretty much it. Vivek Ramaswamy, um, interesting guy. Anyway, alrighty, that's it for this episode of this. I don't know. I don't have a name for it. The Mediocre Astrologer Show. I'm just kidding. All right, guys. Mediocre Astrologer signing off. Man, he's okay. Okay. Well, hit that like button. Take a victory laugh. Laugh it off. Um, book a reading with me. You know the drill. I will see you again soon. All right. Thanks. Bye.